you're closer than you've ever been. And somehow, that makes it worse. The number in your account is higher than it's ever been. The debt is lower. The plan finally actually exists. And yet, you haven't moved. You're hovering, waiting for something. You don't even know what. And the days keep passing. And the waiting starts to feel less like patience and more like something you're afraid to name. This is the part nobody makes videos about. Not the beginning, when you're broke and motivated. Not the middle, when the grind is at least something to hold onto. This part, the almost there part. The part where you should be crossing the finish line, but instead you're standing still, watching other people run past you, wondering what's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you, but something is happening. And if you don't see it clearly, right now, it will cost you everything the work was for. Let's go back 3 years, maybe 5. You were in a different place. The rent was tight. The credit card carried a balance you tried not to think about too hard. You had a plan vague, but warm, like a fire you could see in the distance. You were going to get serious. Kill the debt, build the cushion, then build the wealth. And you did work. That's what makes this so disorienting. You got the raise, or you built the side income, or you cut back in places that genuinely hurt. And somewhere along the way, the fire in the distance got closer. But almost there has been the answer for 18 months. Remember when you opened that retirement calculator? You plugged in the numbers with nervous optimism, like checking a lottery ticket you're almost sure you didn't win. The monthly contribution came back. You sat with it for a sec. Then you closed the tab. Not because you couldn't do it, because doing it would mean something had to stop, and you weren't ready to decide what. Or the subscription you keep meaning to cancel. Not because $12 a month is the thing standing between you and wealth, but because canceling it requires admitting you haven't used it in 4 months. And that admission pulls on a thread that unravels into a bigger conversation you don't want to have with yourself yet. You watch people around you buy things, not extravagant things, just things. A weekend trip, a new couch, a car that doesn't make that sound. And you tell yourself you don't want those things. You're focused, disciplined, but there's a quieter voice underneath, and it says you're scared, not of spending, of what it means if you finally go all the way and it still doesn't work. So you stay in the middle, not broke enough to be desperate, not free enough to relax. Hovering feels like prudence. It feels like patience, but it has a cost that doesn't show up on any balance sheet. It costs you momentum, and it costs you identity, because every month you spend almost there is a month you're practicing being someone who is almost there. 3 years of almost, not 3 years of mistakes, 3 years of 90%, 3 years of the last mile being the one you never run. And underneath all of it, underneath the subscriptions and the calculators and the watching and the waiting, there is a feeling you've been carrying that you've never fully let yourself feel. It's not quite fear. It's not quite shame. It's quieter than both. It's the suspicion that maybe you don't actually believe you're going to make it, that the work is real, but the destination is something that happens to other people, that you'll get close. You always get close, but close is all you get. That feeling is the trap, not your income, not your expenses, not the market, that feeling. And it was installed in you so carefully, so gradually, that you never saw it coming. Here's what actually happened. And this is the part where most people get it wrong. You were never taught to think about money. You were taught to survive it. Surviving money means you learn to manage scarcity. You get good at stretching, at denying, at bracing for the next hit. You build skills perfectly calibrated for not having enough. And then if you work hard, you end up with more. And your brain, your deeply trained survival brain, doesn't know what to do with that, because nobody updated the operating system. Lifestyle inflation didn't sneak up on you all at once. It moved in like a quiet roommate. Each upgrade made complete sense in isolation. Of course, you got a better apartment when you got the better job. Of course, the grocery budget expanded when the income expanded. Each decision defensible. Together, they kept the gap between what you earned and what you kept almost exactly the same. You were too busy surviving to see the pattern. And then there's the comfort of good enough. This one disguises itself as gratitude. You're doing better than your parents did, better than where you started, but better than before. And where I need to be are not the same destination. And somewhere along the way, you let the comparison to your past self replace the vision of your future self, because that comparison was winning and the other one wasn't guaranteed. Nobody told you that the moment you feel financially stable is precisely the moment you need to accelerate, not coast. Nobody told you that the gap, the window between having momentum and having enough, is where fortunes are either built or quietly lost to ordinary life. The game changed, nobody told you. And so you're standing at the edge of a different chapter, with tools built for the last one, wondering why the door won't open. But here's what nobody tells you about money. The almost there trap isn't a financial problem. It's an identity problem. I know that sounds like something you'd put on a coffee mug. Stay with me, because this is where everything shifts. There is a person who is almost wealthy, and there is a person who is wealthy. And the gap between them is not the number in the account. It's the self-concept. It's who they understand themselves to be in relation to money. The person who is almost wealthy still relates to money as something that happens to them, still checks the account with a low-grade nervousness, like waiting for a test result, still feels vaguely guilty about spending, spending, and vaguely anxious about not spending enough on the right things. Still treats wealth as something out there, on the other side of some threshold they haven't quite crossed yet. The person who has crossed it, and this is the part most people miss, often crossed it in their thinking before the account caught up. Think about someone you know or have heard of who grew up with very little and built something real. Not a lottery story, not an inheritance, just someone who genuinely did it. If you could go back and watch them in the years before the number looked impressive, you would notice something. They had already decided, not optimistically, not hopefully, decided. The way you decide the sun is going to rise. It was not a question of if. The questions were all about how and when. That certainty is not arrogance. It's not delusion. It's the absence of the loop. The loop that keeps you almost there is the loop where you are simultaneously trying to build wealth and secretly auditing whether you deserve it. Every decision passes through two filters. Is this smart financially? And beneath that, quieter, am I someone who actually gets to have this? When the second filter is running, the first one almost doesn't matter, because even the right decisions get second-guessed. Even the good months get explained away. Even the progress gets minimized, because letting yourself feel the progress means raising the stakes of losing it. This is where it gets interesting. The wealthy don't think about money the way you were taught to think about it. They don't think about money as a destination. They think about it as a language, a system, a game with comprehensible rules that rewards certain kinds of thinking and punishes others regardless of how hard you work or how good a person you are. And one of the rules of that game, one of the central rules, is that you have to be willing to fully inhabit the next level before you've arrived at it. Not fake it, not perform it. Actually start thinking from that position, making decisions from that position before the account says you're allowed to. This is why millionaires do the opposite of what you'd expect. They don't wait to feel rich before they act rich. They act with the clarity and the standards and the decision-making of the version of themselves they're building toward. And then the account catches up. Because the account always follows the identity, never the other way around. Now, let's talk about what that actually means in practice, because this can't stay abstract or it's useless. There are 4 things happening in your financial life right now. 4 things that are keeping you in the almost, and none of them are what you think they are. The first one, you treat saving as what's left over, and what's left over is always less than you planned. Here's how it works for most people. Income comes in. Spending happens across the month, some of it planned, most of it reactive, and whatever survives gets moved to savings. Sometimes, if there's something left, which there often isn't quite as much of as expected, you know this, you've done this, and you've probably told yourself it's just a cash flow problem, just a discipline problem, just a this month problem, but it's not. It's a systems problem. The common belief is that you save what you don't spend. The invisible cost of that belief is that your spending will always expand to meet your income. Not because you're weak, because your brain is wired to equilibrate. Comfort is the default. Your financial future is being shaped by your 11 p.m. decisions, the ones made when your energy is low and the easiest option feels the most comfortable. The Amazon cart, ordering dinner instead of cooking what's already in the fridge, the small subscription upgrade that feels insignificant. These are not moral fixes, they are margin decisions, and margin decisions compound over time. The shift in identity is to become someone who protects those margins, not out of fear, but out of respect for the future version of yourself who will live with the results. Not every single decision, not with extreme rigidity, but with enough awareness that small, automatic choices don't slowly take control. Think of every dollar as a unit of future freedom, not as a metaphor, but as a practical reality. Every dollar that stays under your control and continues to work and compound becomes a brick in a structure that eventually creates real security. Every dollar that quietly disappears through small, unplanned decisions is simply a brick that never gets placed. Most people let their money leave their account without a clear plan. It goes somewhere, but the purpose isn't always defined. People who build real financial stability tend to give each dollar a role before it arrives. Not obsessively, but systematic. So the default becomes intention, and unplanned spending becomes the exception rather than the rule. The fourth point, many people wait for certainty before they commit, but certainty rarely appears in advance. This is important because systems and strategies can be improved later, but this part is about willingness to act even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. The almost there situation is often less about preparation and more about hesitation. It's not always that the conditions aren't right. Often it's that the risk still feels uncomfortable, and risk almost always feels uncomfortable. The real question is whether the cost of doing nothing becomes clearer than the cost of taking action. Think about people who made significant financial moves, starting a business, investing in property, or choosing a new career direction. If you ask them whether they felt completely ready, the answer is usually no. Most describe some level of uncertainty but decided to move forward anyway because staying in the same place felt worse. Time continues moving either way. 3 years ago, one decision could have started a different path. Today, that same reality still exists, one decision away. The only difference is that several years may have passed in between, and if nothing changes, more years years will pass the same way. There's another idea that is important to understand. Many of the things people feel motivated to buy are influenced heavily by advertising and marketing. Companies invest large amounts of money studying behavior and designing messages that make products feel meaningful or rewarding to purchase. That doesn't mean the desire is wrong, but it does mean that sometimes the feeling of wanting something is partly shaped by external influence rather than purely personal need. Understanding this mechanism helps people make more conscious decisions. Now imagine what another 5 years of almost would look like. Income